What does it take to find your passion, to really follow it? That's what we're going to dive into today. And I've got with me Lisa Drader-Murphy, who runs an incredible presence in the fashion industry in Canada and internationally, from actually a tiny town in Nova Scotia. And actually, she has rebuilt her fashion business from here after taking a little bit of time out, and I'm amazed at all that Lisa does. It is absolutely incredible how she does it with less than 50 hours a week. So what we're going to do is dive into a little bit of what's happened and what's driving Lisa. So Lisa, welcome from meh2YEAH.
Thank you for having me.
And you are coming from the very warm studio you've got in Falmouth right now.
Yes, I am. Yep, I'm in my one of my office lofts in my studio, and it is very warm here in the valley today. So, yeah.
So, Lisa, you actually started your business when you were living in Calgary. Then it got so hectic between your business and the consulting, I understand, that you basically needed to take a time out to really be able to connect with kids and so on and so forth, which is what brought you out here, right?
Yeah, that's making a long story very short, but you're right. I needed a change, and an opportunity had come up, as well as a convergence of big warning signs that my life was getting way too busy to be healthy, not only for me, but for my family. And that's when we decided to leave the concrete jungle of Calgary and move to rural Nova Scotia and live in the middle of 52 apple trees and on a 250-year-old sea captain's estate. So big change.
Yeah. So I do want to come to that decision point when you did step away, but let's go back to where things started with your whole the fashion business, because you started out studying philosophy, right? Can you share a little bit of what happened that day that you decided, oh, maybe there might be another direction for you?
Yeah, I was studying philosophy and humanities. I thought perhaps I would go eventually into either law or social work, or something along that vein. And I found myself getting up very early every morning before I had to go to class and going to the stash of fabric that I had in my closet, thinking, what am I going to wear to class today? Oh, I'll make an outfit. So I'd whip up an outfit, wear a brand new outfit to class. And then there was the day that I arrived at class and I had this brand new outfit on and I realized I'd missed the deadline for the essay. And I thought, this is kind of silly. And I took a step back at that moment. And instead of beating myself up for dropping the ball on the essay, I thought, what are my priorities here? And maybe I should be doing what obviously I enjoy doing. Obviously, if I'd enjoyed writing those essays more, it would have been done and I would have worn yesterday's outfit to class. But that was an eye-opener for me, and I switched gears immediately, finished out my semester, and then planned a move to Calgary, where I entered into a private international program for fashion design.
So that point there where you realized that you loved it so much, and I mean, I'm suddenly, as you say, just as a matter of fact, it kind of blows me away that every morning you would actually make an outfit from, it's like, holy moly. How many people do you think have something that they absolutely love to do, but then push it aside because it's not practical, and they go on and do, they give up that passion for what seems practical?
I think that there could be a couple of answers to that. I think practicality and being taught, we're conditioned that you need to go find the safe route. And then, if you've got all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, then you can go after work and you can play around with that passion. But you need to be safe. You need to, make sure that you've got your feet under you, and that's risky because not all people that, especially in the arts, which I can best relate to in a creative industry, it is a lot of work and it is scary. And there's, a lot of sometimes years before you actually can make a viable income of it. I think that that's a fear that a lot of people have. And sometimes it's just, sometimes that maybe they haven't spent enough time on their passion that they realize how passionate they could be about it once they immerse themselves in it. When I started doing this as my full-time gig, it just grew and grew and grew, and there was no turning back. There was no way I was going to go and find another safe job. I had to keep doing what I was doing.
Yeah. Well, and so let's jump ahead to when you graduated with your fashion training and such. And there's a neat story where you shared once where, a lot of the grads were disillusioned when they didn't get that ideal, oh, I've got the penthouse job and so on, and then they disappeared. How did you follow a different path?
Well, I went from I had the top thesis collection for my graduating class, and I went from that to being one of the least employable designers in all of Calgary because I had no experience, as did the rest of my classmates. And, there's this idea that, you're going to get out there and you're going to get this big job and, your parents told you you're the best and your teachers told you you're the best, but it's not that easy to break into an actual career. A lot of my classmates completely left the industry. They just went and did other things, went and took other training, went back to careers they'd had previous to their education in fashion. And I took all of those jobs that most people would not be passionate about, would not think that our part, wouldn't recognize them as being very important stepping stones in the career in the big scheme of things.
So what let you do that, we chatted about this, is the determination that you would do whatever it took, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I didn't see it as an option. I think that and I've been told, like, some of my classmates and other people who were once in the industry, they left because they were too proud to do those jobs, sweep the cutting room floor and even be a marker maker or, quality control. There's so many jobs along the way in this industry. And I think I was too proud to let my career go, to let my dream go. So I think it depends on your perspective, I think.
Yeah. So that couple of years between when you showed up and realized that your paper wasn't done and go, oh, maybe I should go into fashion or look at fashion, to where you're going to do whatever it takes. You're not going to give it up. That wasn't a long time, that was it?
Yeah, I did a few years. I mean, I graduated in 1990. I launched my collection in 97. So I did work every single job within the garment manufacturing industry, pretty much. I worked my way up. There was one company in particular that I had my biggest amount of growth in, and it was a perfect storm, I guess you could say, like a perfect synergy, in that this happened to be an employer who valued letting people experiment, I guess, with their job description and take on, prove. Like I had a boss who would say, well, just pitch me. If I had an idea, and I would pitch him. And I went from starting there as an assistant pattern grader all the way up to head of design. So I had like 5 promotions in the course of only a few short years because of that environment being so nurturing to somebody with my passion and my drive and my skill set.
Mm-hmm. So that's that time that you were doing all those jobs that you said that no one else. I'm just thinking of from that time when you thought, okay, let's go to fashion, to when you graduated. It was on, right? So what was it? And this is where for you, it's just the way you are. It's an almost innate. But where you went to, oh, maybe I will do whatever it takes to get to where I want to go. So what were the building blocks that let you make that journey to say, I'm not surrendering, I'm not giving this up, that I know this is happening from maybe?
That's an interesting question. A lot of people might look at what I'm doing now in the 5 stores in the studio and, everything that's happening in my business. And I wasn't that young designer that had the vision board and said, I'm going to have 5 stores in 20 years and I'm going to be on the shopping channel. I actually took my career day by day, and my goal was not to be this big fashion designer or be producing women's clothing even. It was to use my skills, feel as though I was learning and growing in my career. And I mean, I ended up, taking a job with a company that did technical clothing, technical industrial gear. And my first job was grading coveralls with them. And, and it was kind of boring, but I learned my skills. Oh my goodness. After, a year of grading coveralls and overalls and safety vests, I knew how to grade. Like nobody could take that skill away from me. And I also, in that job, had this epiphany one day. Nobody wanted that job. Like my bosses had a hard time finding, designer pattern makers, people with my skill set and training to take that job because it's not very glamorous. And I thought, and my friends even said that, oh, that's too bad. You have to do that job. And I thought to myself, this is a huge opportunity. Nobody wants this job. And I set out to become Canada's only expert in freelance design of technical industrial apparel. I thought, if nobody else wants to do this, nobody's doing it. And I worked for every company from Kelowna to Dartmouth, designing these programs for companies because they'd never seen an actual fashion designer focus on this. The product was, derived from feedback to the pattern maker from the field, and a bit of liaison between the marketing and sales team, but they'd never really had a designer with all of the design background and training on top of all of that technical ability to design it. And I carved out a niche, and that is, I would never have been able to do that had I not stepped out of, that egocentric place while I was grading those coveralls. And my friends are all like, what a boring job. I would never have been able to carve out that niche for myself. And it opened many, many doors for me, including coming to Nova Scotia. So.
Okay. So there's 2 separate things in there. Number one is what that I heard from you is you're looking in every job. What are you learning? What's the opportunity for learning here?
Always.
And second is, when nobody wants to do something, what is the hidden opportunity there? Because no one else is wanting to dive in.
It's true.
I mean, 2 really powerful questions.
Mm-hmm. There's always a hidden opportunity. I always say that, I work with a number of emerging designers and, emerging entrepreneurs in general, and always talking about that. Like how can you be different? How can you recognize something unique about the opportunity you're sitting in right now? And sometimes all it is you're putting in time and getting a paycheck and learning that maybe that's not the direction you want to go. But often, if you don't ask the question of yourself, you're going to miss the opportunity. So we have nothing to lose by approaching it that way. And I guess, after I reached that position with becoming the technical, the freelance technical designer that was sought after by numerous companies, there was one day that I was working for this particular company that I discovered a stash of unused vintage fabric. And there's a whole backstory to this. We probably don't have time to tell the whole thing, but to make a really long story short, I ended up having to go back to work when my daughter was 9 days old and skip my maternity leave. So, and they convinced me to do so by building a little nursery for me in my office. And the whole thing is a blur. I hardly remember anything about it because I was so exhausted. But to get her to sleep in the afternoon, I would walk her down, the production floor, and we would, that whirring of, 300 industrial sewing machines is pretty effective white noise to get an infant to sleep. One day she was not going to sleep very quickly. So I ended up at the very back, and I found this warehouse full of this vintage fabric, this like 1950s Harris tweed from Scotland, and beautiful quality wool suitings and silk lining. And it was all packed in these pallets. And I thought, what is this doing here? Like, we're doing bunker gear for firefighters. I don't think they're wearing Harris tweed anywhere in that ensemble. And went back to my boss and I said, I found the fabric and this is really cool. Why is it there? Can I do something with it? And he said, well, our father who started the company was an immigrant from Poland. And he, made tailored suits in the 50s. And then, eventually, hired a couple of helpers and then, added a dry cleaning component. And then, the local electric company would come along and say, can you make us 10 shirts? And then the local oil and gas company would come along and say, can you make us 50 coveralls? And that's how the manufacturing industry in Canada and most of the US evolved, from the 40s, 50s, straight through to what it became in the 80s and 90s when it actually really became decimated. And I asked if I could do something with this fabric, and he said, okay, it's just old stuff, but go ahead. And that's when I designed the first collection that I launched under my Turbine label. So having recognized, again, seeing the opportunity in this stash of fabric, there had been many predecessors in that company who have seen that fabric, and they saw old fabric wrapped up in plastic on pallets. And I thought, this is something, I have to figure this out, because this is an opportunity. I can just feel it. And it launched my business that is 20 years old this year.
So this is, I'm hearing a real common theme here is that one of your skills then is to see the opportunities that are hidden. And I suspect that pops up all over your work and so on, doesn't it?
Sometimes too much.
Yeah. And one quick question before we pass by that, you took that opportunity of becoming an expert in industrial wear and so on and so forth. Is that impacting your fashion business now, what you learned there, in ways that people who just went straight into fashion might not bring in certain skills and insights that you got from that?
Possibly. I worked in a lot of different sectors. I had done baby clothing, sportswear, menswear, tailored women's wear, lingerie. One of my first jobs was working in a company that did high-end silk lingerie for Holt Renfrew. I think all of that experience is valuable in what I do now. Whether it was the technical industrial apparel, I think that more importantly, it was the experience working in a garment manufacturing setting, because I have been able to, on a much smaller scale, I have a very small factory, but I have the skills and the knowledge. I know how to make things efficiently. I know how to operate industrial equipment. And you don't learn that in school. You might learn how to operate a serger and a straight stitch, but I have a 5-inch reciprocal industrial cutting machine, and they don't teach you that in school. And I can cut 300 dresses at once with that. So a lot of the skills that were transferable from manufacturing have definitely helped me become efficient. And people are often surprised that I don't have 25 people working for me in my studio every day, because they would assume that. They would say, well, I can do, 10 dresses a week. How can you do 500? And it's because we have a very, very efficient system.
And that allows you to be that vertical as you are.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. If I can, I'd like to come back to that decision that you made to sort of slow things down to move to Nova Scotia, right? Once things were really booming, really doing well. That's something that's so common. You hear about that people don't do that, and caca happens in their lives, right? And it's times like that really show your values. Like, to me, I say your values, forget what you say they are. They're revealed by your calendar and your checkbook. That's it, right? So for you had a really powerful moment where you came back and you suddenly realized all the stuff happening with your kids that you're missing. So what enabled you to say, okay, I'm so passionate about this work, but I need to put it on pause?
I had to take a step back and really evaluate, what am I passionate about? I didn't have to let a single aspect of my passion go, but I did have to change my lifestyle so that I could balance my life and my family better. And this is before every company had a website, and it was before social media. And I thought all of these opportunities kept knocking on my door. I was industry expert on an international television show shortly after launching my collection, Turbine. And we were growing so quickly, and I had investors coming to me, and I was doing these makeovers on A channel and being in the green room at 3, 4 a.m. Wednesdays. It was exhausting. And I realized that there was too much happening with the consulting and with my business growth, and I wasn't there for my kids. They were 6 and 1.5, and knew that I needed to make a major change. So an opportunity did come up, and I waffled. I said no at first, and then I said, wait a minute, this might be the change that my family needs. And we packed up everything we had in the concrete jungle of Calgary, and we moved to the Annapolis Valley in the middle of a 4-acre apple orchard surrounded by 52 apple trees and the odd cow that would break from the neighboring fence, and made that drastic change. And I didn't walk away from my passion. What I did was I took it with me, and I let it slow down and manifest in a new way. And I actually began to enjoy the simple aspects of what I had been doing that was getting out of control, where it was becoming too much business and too much being asked of me and demanded of my time. And I slowed down, and I could go out to my studio, and I could work a 30 or 40-hour week instead of that 70 or 80-hour week, which is what I was doing in Calgary.
And from that time of slowing down, what have you learned? What are 2 or 3 of the biggest things you've learned that you're taking forward?
From that slowing down? Well, it was my attempt to find balance. What it did indicate to me was that I have no willpower, and I absolutely had no choice but to extricate myself from this big hotbed of opportunities and put myself somewhere where I was relatively isolated. And that was the only way I could slow down. I have a very hard time. Like, I'm seeing, my peripheral vision, like I'm like an owl's head, like I'm seeing way too much, and there's way too much opportunity out there. And I kind of bite off more than I can chew in that regard sometimes. So I learned that about myself. I learned that there are different ways to run this type of business, and that it is possible to have an incredible lifestyle and, create the life you want. You just have to solve the extraneous little challenges as you recognize them, like being, in rural Nova Scotia and being, having this studio that's way up a private laneway proved to be a little bit intimidating, I was told at first. And I had to figure out a way to get people to come visit my studio. I'd never had this problem in Calgary. We had stores, and thousands of people would come by every day, and hundreds would come in. And suddenly I'm like, oh my goodness, I only have 3 people here all day. So that was a challenge that I had to figure out. And I, did private trunk shows, and I called university campuses, and I book, a private show for 6 or 8 profs and the president of Acadia, and say, I have Wednesday night available. Come out. Let me show you what it is I do. I'll serve you something bubbly, and that's how I developed my clientele. I also opened a restaurant here for a while to draw people as a destination.
Okay.
So I learned a lot through that process.
Okay. And the final thing I want to touch base on is giving back is really important to you through your fund, through mentoring, the boards that you're on. And I know that we chatted that sometimes it's the saying no is a challenge in that as well. But why is it so important to invest, to give back? Why? Because you put a huge amount of time into that when you already have a busy week.
I don't like to say no to people. And if they're, I believe in synergy. I believe that if everybody took a step back from what am I going to get out of this? And looked at the synergy that they and who their ask is bringing forward, I get a ton out of saying yes. I love the people that I meet who are like-minded, who in turn become my clients, you know, tell people to come and visit. Like there is a win-win in all of that. And in terms of the charity work that we do, to me, that's just, everybody should be doing that. And a lot of my friends do. Like, you know, I have a great group of like-minded people that I surround myself with. And it's just part of our value system and our lifestyle. In terms of the mentoring, I am so inspired by these people that I end up mentoring. They give way more back to me than they probably realize. You know, it's like when I'm looking at, for example, student work of fashion designers and mentoring a new fashion designer who, you know, really hasn't experienced a whole lot yet, maybe just starting their first job or maybe trying to launch their own collection. I love that energy that they bring because they don't know yet what they don't know. And that's where the win-win comes in, is that they are pushing me without even realizing it to be more creative and take more creative risks and try different techniques perhaps. And I am hopefully giving them something, helping them, you know, overstep a landmine, you know, like not make some of the mistakes that I knew that I made or certainly would have made had I not had the experience that I did in my own career. So it's a really great synergy, and it's good for everybody involved.
Yeah. So Lisa, I think we're coming up on time. I really, really want to thank you. This has been phenomenal. I love what's come out in terms of you know, one of your nascent abilities is seeing opportunity, and I can understand how that could almost get to, oh my God. Because and you're right, the complementary skill then to that is knowing what to say yes to. Yeah. But also what you said about really focusing on what are you learning, because I'll bet you that everything that you're doing now, what you just said with the mentoring, you're still learning in everything that you're doing.
Yeah, always. You always have to be learning. That's keeping an open mind.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this. I truly, truly appreciate you making the time, especially in the Valley heat today. Just to let everyone know, next week we are going to take a very different look at the issue of empowerment, which is a big challenge for individuals, saying, how do I, you know, that are feeling disengaged, disempowered, unable to do things, but also for leaders in terms of how do you actually get past the buzzword to actually truly empower your people. We're going to take a little different angle with this, so that we can get some fresh insights into practically what could happen with a couple of guests. So that's what we'll be looking at next Monday on From meh2YEAH. Thank you so much, Lisa. Truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me again. That was wonderful.